This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Chet Chris, London, UK. Nicholas Nickleby, by Charles Dickens. Chapter 22. Nicholas, accompanied by Smike, sallies forth to seek his fortune. He encounters Mr. Vincent Crummles, and who he was is herein made manifest. The whole capital which Nicholas found himself entitled to, either in possession, reversion, remainder, or expectancy, after paying his rent and settling with the broker from whom he had hired his poor furniture, did not exceed by more than a few halfpence the sum of 20 shillings. And yet he hailed the morning on which he had resolved to quit London with a light heart, and sprang from his bed with an elasticity of spirit which is happily the lot of young persons, or the world would never be stocked with old ones. It was a cold, dry, foggy morning in early spring. A few meagre shadows flitted to and fro in the misty streets, and occasionally there loomed through the dull vapour the heavy outline of some hackney coach wending homewards, which, drawing slowly nearer, rolled jangling by, scattering the thin crust of frost from its whitened roof, and soon was lost again in the cloud. At intervals were heard the tread of slipshod feet, and the chilly cry of the poor sweep as he crept shivering to his early toil. The heavy footfall of the official watcher of the night, pacing slowly up and down, and cursing the tardy hours that still intervened between him and sleep. The rambling of ponderous carts and waggons, the roll of the lighter vehicles which carried buyers and sellers to the different markets, the sound of ineffectual knocking at the doors of heavy sleepers, all these noises fell upon the ear from time to time, but all seemed muffled by the fog, and to be rendered almost as indistinct to the ear as was every object to the sight. The sluggish darkness thickened as the day came on, and those who had the courage to rise and peep at the gloomy street from their curtained windows crept back to bed again, and coiled themselves up to sleep. Before even these indications of approaching morning were rife in busy London, Nicholas had made his way alone to the city, and stood beneath the windows of his mother's house. It was dull and bare to see, but it had light and life for him, for there was at least one heart within its old walls to which insult or dishonour would bring the same blood rushing that flowed in his own veins. He crossed the road, and raised his eyes to the window of the room where he knew his sister slept. It was closed and dark. Poor girl, thought Nicholas, she little thinks who lingers here. He looked again, and felt for a moment almost vexed that Kate was not there to exchange one word at parting. Good God, he thought, suddenly correcting himself, what a boy I am! It is better as it is, said Nicholas, after he had lounged on a few paces and returned to the same spot. When I left them before, and could have said good-bye 1,000 times if I had chosen, I spared them the pain of leave-taking, and why not now? As he spoke, some fancied motion of the curtain almost persuaded him for an instant that Kate was at the window, and by one of those strange contradictions of feeling which are common to us all, he shrunk involuntarily into a doorway that she might not see him. He smiled at his own weakness, said, God bless them, and walked away with a lighter step. Smike was anxiously expecting him when he reached his old lodgings, and so was Newman, who had expended a day's income in a can of rum and milk to prepare them for the journey. They had tied up the luggage, Smike shouldered it, and away they went, with Newman Noggs in company, for he had insisted on walking as far as he could with them overnight. Which way? asked Newman wistfully. To Kingston first, replied Nicholas. And where afterwards? asked Newman. Why won't you tell me? Because I scarcely know myself, good friend, rejoined Nicholas, laying his hand upon his shoulder, and if I did, I have neither plan nor prospect yet, and might shift my quarters 100 times before you could possibly communicate with me. I am afraid you have some deep scheme in your head. said Newman, doubtfully. So deep, replied his young friend, that even I can't fathom it. Whatever I resolve upon, depend upon it, I will write you soon. You won't forget? said Newman. I am not very likely to, rejoined Nicholas. I have not so many friends that I shall grow confused among the number, and forget my best one. Occupied in such discourse, they walked on for a couple of hours, as they might have done for a couple of days if Nicholas had not sat himself down on a stone by the wayside, and resolutely declared his intention of not moving another step until Newman Noggs turned back. Having pleaded ineffectually first for another half-mile, and afterwards for another quarter, Newman was fain to comply, and to shape his course towards Golden Square, after interchanging many hearty and affectionate farewells, and many times turning back to wave his hat to the two wayfarers when they had become mere specks in the distance. Now listen to me, Smike, said Nicholas, as they trudged with stout hearts onwards. We are bound for Portsmouth. Smike nodded his head and smiled, but expressed no other emotion, for whether they had been bound for Portsmouth or Port Royal, it would have been alike to him, so they had been bound together. I don't know much of these matters, resumed Nicholas, but Portsmouth is a seaport town, and if no other employment is to be obtained, I should think we might get on board some ship. I am young and active, and could be useful in many ways. So could you. I hope so, replied Smike. When I was at that... You know where I mean? Yes, I know, said Nicholas. You needn't name the place. Well, when I was there, resumed Smike, his eyes sparkling at the prospect of displaying his abilities, I could milk a cow and groom a horse with anybody. Ah, said Nicholas gravely. I'm afraid they don't keep many animals of either kind on board ship, Smike, and even when they have horses, that they are not very particular about rubbing them down. Still, you can learn to do something else, you know. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I am very willing, said Smike, brightening up again. God knows you are, rejoined Nicholas, and if you fail, it shall go hard, but I'll do enough for us both. Do we go all the way to-day? asked Smike, after a short silence. That would be too severe a trial, even for your willing legs, said Nicholas, with a good-humoured smile. No. Godalming is some 30 and odd miles from London, as I found from a map I borrowed, and I purpose to rest there. We must push on again tomorrow, for we are not rich enough to loiter. Let me relieve you of that bundle. Come. No, no, rejoined Smike, falling back a few steps. Don't ask me to give it up to you. Why not? asked Nicholas. Let me do something for you at least, said Smike. You will never let me serve you as I ought. You will never know how I think day and night of ways to please you. You are a foolish fellow to say it, for I know it well, and see it, or I should be a blind and senseless beast, rejoined Nicholas. Let me ask you a question while I think of it, and there is no one by, he added, looking him steadily in the face. Have you a good memory? I don't know, said Smike, shaking his head sorrowfully. I think I had once, but it's all gone now, all gone. Why do you think you had once? asked Nicholas, turning quickly upon him, as though the answer in some way helped out the purport of his question. Because I could remember when I was a child, said Smike, but that is very, very long ago, or at least it seems so. I was always confused and giddy at that place you took me from, and could never remember, and sometimes couldn't even understand what they said to me. Let me see. You are wondering now, said Nicholas, touching him on the arm. No, replied his companion, with a vacant look. I was only thinking how... He shivered involuntarily as he spoke. Think no more of that place, for it is all over, retorted Nicholas, fixing his eyes full upon that of his companion, which was fast settling into an unmeaning, stupefied gaze, once habitual to him, and common even then. What of the first day you went to Yorkshire? Eh? cried the lad. That was before you began to lose your recollection, you know, said Nicholas quietly. Was the weather hot or cold?